So very good afternoon and a warm welcome to all our participants. Great to have you all for today's session. We have a couple of minutes before we begin with our webinar. So I do see Sahil Khan, Radha. So these have been like, it's really great to see you all join our webinar on regular basis. Thank you so much for joining us. So well, it's time to begin with another exciting session on connecting the dots. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This new normal has made the organizations rethink and establish new rules that will help the organization and its employees at large. They need to go beyond diversity, training, engaging, educating leaders on how to build system, policies, practices where all employees are represented, accepted, and treated fairly. The development and implementation of these changes call for collaboration and working closely with all the stakeholders in the organization. However, these challenges are far from over as the new normal way of working throws up several questions that need an answer. Join us in this electrifying session where our experts, through their experience and vision, help us get an answer to these questions. HRAI welcomes you all to the session on connecting the dots, new rules of the old game, HR Redefined. To know more about HRAI and its event, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. It would be great to have all the participants' feedback. We will be running a poll before the Q&A session. Request all participants to kindly give your feedback on the session. I now take the privilege to introduce our esteemed panel members for our today's webinar. Mr. Tarun Agarwal, co-founder, Wellness Works. He is currently bootstrapping Wellness Work, a behavioral wellness startup on a mission to help organizations and their people apply first principles of behavioral science to their operations by building a continuous individual and organizational emotional wellness support system. As a co-founder and hustler, he drives the vision using his rich experience in sales and leadership. He is a commerce grad with an MBA in product leadership, currently pursuing his interest in a student of neuropersonality and culture. His passion in this field also drives his involvement in a number of forums and partnering with organizations to drive change in their policies and initiatives. Prior to starting Wellness Works, he spent almost 2 decades in the IT and telecom sector. His last assignment was with Tata Group, where he led the regional consulting practice for ICT services. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invite.
My pleasure.
Our next panel member, Ms. Debjani Roy, Chief HR Officer, Mind Your Fleet. Debjani Roy is an industry stalwart and domain expert in the field of human resource with over 25 years of hardcore functional experience across companies such as Nalco, Bharti, HCL Tech, Bentley Systems, Kunoi, SRL Diagnostics, Fortis Group, etc. With a degree in organization behavior from FMS, Delhi University, over her career span, she has earned an established reputation of being over the most progressive HR business leader, having provided transformative people leadership across industries. Awarded many a times amongst the business and HR fraternities as one of the country's most dynamic HR managers. Currently, besides being the chief HR advisor to Mind Your Fleet, a reputed software startup in the transportation space, Debjani runs her own HR solution and advisory firm called Wind Beneath the Wings Venture LLP. Debjani is also a visiting professor to a number of reputed B schools, besides being on the jury of a large number of schools and colleges for their incubation labs. Debjani, besides the TEDx, is also a sought after speaker at various forums, an author, an education activist, as well as coach and mentor to large number of students. Social mentoring is Debjani's current passion, both in the corporate and academic domains, with a special focus on women. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invite. Our next panel member, Mr. Deepak Manek, HR Director,
Thank you.
SITA. He is an HR Director for Middle East, India, and Africa at SITA, a global information technology company that provides IT and telecommunications services to the air transport industry. A passionate leader with a dynamic personality, Deepak has over 15 years of experience spread across 5 continents and diverse HR functions. Deepak believes a people-first approach grounded in sound HR principles, an environment of learning, and a growth mindset are key to a thriving company. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invite. Now I'll introduce the moderator for today's session, Mr. Yatindra Vijay, HR Director, InfoStretch. He comes with 17 plus years of progressive experience in managing and leading various aspects of human resource, spanning across high-paced business domains of IT and telecom. He is a prominent leader and has helped building organization, culture, and building great place to work. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invite. Without taking much time, I now request Mr. Yatindra to take over this session. Over to you, Mr. Yatindra.
Thank you, Peter and HRI. It's really exciting to be here today. Good afternoon to everyone. Today, as you all know, is an extremely relevant topic, and I'm very, very excited to welcome you all. In today's discussion, what we really want to do is to zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture on how the new normal will look in future, how the business will look at the HR processes, people strategies, and HR technology. What will be discarded and what will be adopted post the COVID-19. But before we start, I would really like to express my gratitude and would like to thank everyone who have joined today and the entire HR community on how we have managed and managing the current challenges, pressure of the disruption, and balancing it with the human side. Thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll continue to add value to the businesses. So let me start. My first question is to Ms. Debjani. Right, there's an interesting trend, Debjani, that we are seeing, which we anticipated a couple of years later, and that is that every individual, most of the individual rather, are focusing on upskilling and picking up their own learnings through online videos, webinars, certification, etc., etc. In fact, as per the recent LinkedIn statistics, LinkedIn members spent over 420,000 hours learning in July 2020 alone, compared to 97,000 of learning hours in July 2019 only in India. And then you have Udemy of the world and Coursera, etc., etc. Something this was anticipated, but this was something which we anticipated pretty late. So my question to you is, how do you see this trend once the pandemic is over? Do you see a change? Will it subside, or will it be constant, or will it grow up? Over to you.
Thank you, Yatindra. And again, a very warm welcome and a very happy good afternoon to everyone who's there out there. Thank you, HRAI, and thank you, my fellow colleagues on the panel. Let's take the discussion forward to make it enriching for all, and I hope everybody has something to take away from it. Um, a very, very interesting and very relevant question, Yatindra, to start with. It's almost like if I take myself back to the BC era, which is the before COVID. Now we are talking DC and AC, which is the before COVID and after COVID. Okay, no longer the Anno Domini kinds. No, so when I take myself back to the BC era, we used to have these large number of seminars, conventions, and all of it, where each one of our speakers would get up on the podium and talk about, oh, digital learning. Yeah, that's around the corner. We talk about artificial learning. We'll talk about, AI, how far or how close it is. We would talk about Internet of Things and machine learning. And everything that we spoke about at that point of time was with a futuristic perception. It was all about, yes, it's coming, but it's coming round the corner. Yes, it's coming, but it's got still some time to take. And one of the things which I think made us all look at it from a futuristic perspective is because we ourselves were perhaps not that ready to take on that trend ourselves, because we had all been settled into a certain kind of learning environment where the organizations used to take it upon themselves to provide a complete environment of learning opportunities. We would have in-person learning, in-house learning, external learning, sponsoring people outside to universities as well as academic institutions. It was all physical. It was all done in the physical space, and there was a certain amount of comfort lined over there. And learning per se was also sort of linked to either a performance management or a reward and recognition, but it was not something which was all pervasive across the organization, looked at something which was an absolute necessity. Now we come to AC, which is after COVID. Suddenly, all that was supposed to be 3 years or 5 years down the line is right here, staring you and me in the face. Which is because this one major alteration that's happened because of this pandemic is that our physical space has been reduced to nothing more than our home in many cases. Suddenly, we have a disproportionate amount of time which we are spending at home even while at work. Now, this was not something envisaged even, let's say, 12 months ago. And with this comes a paradigm shift in the thinking that is going through the minds of both the employer as well as the employee as to, in these new circumstances, in this new environment where working itself or the norms of working itself have undergone such huge changes by itself, how do we remain relevant? Does it have to be a push? Does learning continue to be a push? Or does learning continue now suddenly evolve as a mainstay across the lifetime of every employee? Because if he has to remain relevant, he has to keep acquiring skills to become relevant through this new environment. There are new learnings that have to be adopted across. And it is not just for an employee, it is also for the manager, it is also for the leader. There is learning which has now become the all pervasive truth across an organization, where the manager has to learn about how to lead remotely. The manager has to understand how to do performance management in a remote environment. How do you track performance? What metrics do you use? How do you close discussions? Most of it without being in the social space of being across a table. It's a completely new normal. It's something which many of us have not even envisaged. And today, when we are thrown into it, we are actually feeling a little bit of a discomfort around the corner. So, the only way we can actually get to closing the gaps is by skilling ourselves in multiple ways, not only from the managerial perspective, but also from the employee perspective. And therefore, this new age or completely new paradigm of these online and digital learnings that has come into being. And this is not something which I feel, Yatindra, will be a mainstay for organizations. It'll probably have to start from the academic zone itself. Because today, when these students are being talked about, and students are being forced to even accept lectures, whether it's B school or E school or graduate school, everywhere the webinars and the guest lectures, everything is digital in space today. So the learning has started right up front, strongly from there itself. The physicality of being in the four walls and four contours of a classroom has vastly undergone a change. And that is the right preparation for the new generation to come in, because that is going to be the trend which is also going to help them be successful with further learnings while they come into the corporate. So I feel even after the COVID probably takes a back seat or starts relegating to the back screen, there will still be enough hunger, enough requirement for this digital activity to stay in space, because we've learned it the hard way. Today, we've learned it the hard way and it has been imposed upon us, and we are running and scrambling to keep pace with it. I think the earliest we make it as part of our DNA in organizations, the better we will be equipped for any such vagaries or any such unprecedented occasions in the future. So I think it's here to stay. Thanks.
Thanks, Devjani. I think very well explained that about the paradigm shift and how learning is evolving from a push factor to a pull factor, and the DNA and the organizations making it as a DNA. Thank you so much. I move on to now to Mr. Deepak. Deepak, it's been 6 months that everyone knows that it's been 6 months that we are into this crisis. Interestingly, many reports indicate that the legacy matrices are insufficient and may not be correct for assessing our work from home performance. And the justification stated in those reports is predominantly that they do not reflect the realities of today's digital world, right? So how do you see performance KPIs in the post-COVID era? Do you think that organizations need to rethink altogether about how they manage the performance? Deepak.
Thanks, Yatendra, and very good afternoon to everyone present over here. It's a real pleasure to be with all of you, and thank you, HRI for inviting me. So, Yatendra, I think what I want to do for this question is really, I just want to share with everyone over here is what I've personally experienced within these past 5 to 6 months, within my organization. I think there are a few things which I've noticed is, I think one, and then I'll probably come to answering your question is, so one part is really that I've personally seen really the teams and people really coming together. The collaboration part has really increased, and everyone is trying to work towards weathering the storm. So if I may, in one way, there is this one common purpose that people are working towards, right? And that's weathering the storm, and that's where all the collaborations and teams are talking to each other, relationships are being built, and everybody is working towards this one common objective. That's something which I've seen in the past 5 to 6 months. The second thing which I've really seen, and it's a very pleasant change to see, because as HR professionals, I think we've been talking about this for a very long time. And this is basically managers building true relationships with their team members, sort of finally. I think, with everybody obviously working from home, previously a lot of managers I used to hear that even though we have flexible working policies in the organization, I think the trust factor, with managers not trusting their employees with this working from home was always present. But this obviously pandemic has sort of shown us that everybody has gone away, working from home, and now managers have to sort of shift towards, okay, how do I actually make this work? And what this has really done is more and more managers are doing frequent check-ins with their employees. And I think the good part of this is not really only to see that if they're working or, are they actually helping out their kids with the homework and all those kind of things. Not really that, right? I think the most important thing over here, I feel, is seeing real concern in these managers, making sure that checking in with their employees, seeing how they're actually doing with all of this working from home, how are they juggling work life as well as the personal life, with kids being at home as well, and us working from such a confined sort of space. And the other thing I think which has happened as well is the talks have also changed in terms of how can I actually support you in achieving your task, achieving your goals. So I think that's another part where the conversations and the frequent check-in conversations have changed quite a bit as well. So that's something, a pleasant change that I've seen. The third thing that I've seen is that obviously with the pandemic hitting us, and we are a tech company for the aviation industry, so it has obviously hit us quite a bit as well, since all the airlines and airports have been shut and grounded. So I think obviously the leaders and the managers and the organization has realized, yes, we need to sort of shift our goals, right? I mean, the goals that were set in early January, this is definitely no longer achievable and attainable, not only, for this year. So we need to pivot, we need to relook at these goals, and we need to change them. So that is something that has obviously occurred where, a lot of companies and, let's say if the goal setting is done once a year, probably we look at it, half yearly. If we're lucky, quarterly, we look at things. But this has really shown that, okay, these goals basically, which were set in January, they are not set in stone. You can relook at them, change them, and then link it to the conversations that the managers are actually having with their team members, because the goals, what have been set, the team members and the managers, what they're doing is they're breaking these goals down into smaller tasks and then going at these tasks one at a time, right? And if there are any sort of issues, there are obviously regular check-ins, more weekly, if not daily check-ins happening as well. So what is happening is, if there are any sort of any issues or any sort of basically things that an employee cannot achieve, or they need to pivot, I think the managers are out there supporting them and supporting their employees out there on a sort of regular basis as well. So I think these three things I've seen in the past 6 months, which I've been wanting to see in my managers in the organization for a very long period of time, right? So what I would like to say in terms of performance, and I just want to relate it back to when the four of us speakers we were speaking about it, and Debjani mentioned keep things simple. I think there's no big revolution, groundbreaking technology or anything needed for the performance management, right? These are the small things which we've been, I think, talking about for a very long time, but somehow they didn't really happen. But come COVID, and this has, very naturally managers and teams and employees have actually taken to it. So my only hope is that the three things which I've really mentioned, I'm hoping that people take this along with them in the, in the AC era, as Debjani put it, as well. And yeah, hopefully, if we actually do that in the longer run, I think the whole performance management system will see major improvement. Because I mean, I was reading I think an article, whether it was by Gartner or Deloitte, I can't remember, but only 2% of executives thought that their performance management systems were effective, right? Which is a ridiculously low number. So if we actually do embark on this journey where we set our goals, but they're not set in stone, we do take the time to review them as on a regular basis, have frequent conversations with our employees, build those relationships with our team members, right? Where we understand, things more than metrics. It's not only about metrics, right? If you don't achieve this, okay, you're a poor performer. If you achieve this, you're a great performer. It's not only about that. There are things beyond that and beneath that as well. So I think understanding all of that, that's where I think we will have a successful performance management system. So that's where I'm at, Yatendra.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you. I think I'm with you, and you've covered it very, 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 some of the very important aspects of it, like keep it simple, frequent check-ins. So would you mind, in your experience, what should be the duration of these frequent check-ins? Is it, just a thought? Should it be weekly, monthly, quarterly, bi-weekly? What is that? Yeah.
So Honestly, I think it really I would say depends on teams. It depends on the projects. So I'll tell you my personal team experience. Right, I started when obviously when we were in the midst of all of this back in March, April. I started daily check-ins with my teams. Right, I wanted to do that. I wanted to make sure everybody's doing fine. And things are working okay. But very quickly, I moved to weekly check-ins because, and we started doing that. And then after that weekly check-ins, and we used to be very open within me and my team, right? Like anytime you guys think that this weekly check-ins are getting too much for you guys, let me know and we can move to monthly check-ins, because my previous mantra was really monthly check-ins with my team members, spend enough time with them, look at their sort of daily activity, but also look at their goals and their development, so and take that as a coaching session as well. So that was my monthly setup. But we moved from daily to weekly, and we're now back to monthly, Yatendra.
Perfect.
So that's how I've moved personally in my check-ins.
Perfect. Thanks, Tarun. Thank you so much. All right. So moving on to Tarun. Now, the care of your people and their ability to work from home will be different going forward. How do you approach that?
I think that's one of the most relevant questions that comes out from the situation that we are in. Before I answer that question, Yatendra, can I say this? When I shared with my network and my friends that we're going to have this dialogue today, which is conceptualized by HRAI, one of my friends who is a senior UX designer quipped and said, "How relevant is the HR business or function going to be?" Right? It was a shocking question, but it made me think a little deeper. And then what I realized is this: that the quintessential skill that would make a CEO incredibly effective going forward is going to be people skills. And if you look at the transformation from the industrial era, from the start of the industrial era, exceptionally high sales skills made great CEOs. And then we saw that shift to finance. And then we saw that shift to tech. And that's where we are currently. But now you would see that shift going towards people and understanding people, understanding community and values. And from that perspective, I think CHROs or HR leaders are going to play an incredibly important role in designing corporate goals based on community values, right? So to set that with context, and now if I can answer this question, and if I break it down, so care for our people, right? So so all of us, we are resources who think, right? And it's our environment that we live in, which plays a major role in terms of influencing or inspiring how we think. So one of the key objectives for us as people, as HRs in this function, would be to understand an individual in their environment. Now that's the complexity that we have to start dealing with. And that complexity arises from the diversity of social norms and individual values, right? You would see that the earlier rules that we were applying when we had a common space, the legal compliance, the legal rules, be it for workplace safety, conducive physical environments, to even payrolls, to code of conduct, or social compliance, which is necessarily best practices adopted from the industry. Those would now seem fairly easy. And now what we're going to enter into, or we're entering into, is going to be incredibly difficult, but there is a way to navigate ourselves through that. That's what I've learned so far. Hence, if you look at work from home or work from anywhere, this is not a novel policy. This is something that I at least witnessed a decade back, right? But the way we applied work from home as a policy pre-COVID and the way we have approached it now, it's poles apart. And if you think deep, what has undergone as change is in our thinking. What did we think earlier? We were thinking primarily, what if employees don't work hard enough? That was the fundamental question that was there on our mind. Right. And thereby considering that employees or people work in their selfish interests, right? And this is a mindset that is primarily an outcome of the principal agent model of economics. And it's hardwired into us, right? What did we learn now? That people are guided by purpose and they don't see them in isolation of their social context, workplace, family, club, community, etc. So so to approach this, the first and foremost is going to be change in mindset, which is unlearning the mindset that's been formed up by the principal agent model. How do we go about that? And one of the frameworks that I found which could be incredibly helpful, and Deepak did touch upon that briefly when he said that we tried a weekly model, then we went to a monthly model, or we had the monthly model, went to a weekly model, we asked people, and then we went back to monthly model. So this iteration, this framework is essentially the design thinking framework, if you look at it from that principle, which means it is necessary thinking from first principles. One of the reasons why I also think that this is a solid framework is because the core of this framework is built on the most advanced biological technology available to mankind. The most advanced tools that we have are emotions, basic emotions: happy, sad, fear, angry, disgust, and surprise. Combinations of them give us complex emotions, intensities. And the application of those tools and add to that thinking gives us the technological advancement, and that is empathy. And that's the core on which design thinking principles have been built. So, and if time permits, I would love to share the formula of empathy that I've learned so far. At the end, maybe, if time permits. The other aspects within design thinking framework that play an incredible role is user experience, so that allows us to understand individual needs. Lean startup model thinking, which means business continuity cannot be, that has to be taken into account, which means we have to create sandbox, small experimental groups, experiment from there, and then go to each group sequentially and then grow that. And the third thing is agile methodology, right? We take everything in parallel, move that in parallel, instead of making a big commitment, making small commitments, understanding what commitments to make, deliver those commitments, and it flows from there. If I summarize this, it's necessarily building our ability to tolerate risk, going from negativity bias, which is again a biological manifestation. This is how we think. We think about negatives first. Going from negativity bias to collective consciousness, bringing in people's experiences, and from there, devising rules. And that's going to manifest as even corporate goals, if I can say so. Now, I think time permits. So let me explain empathy a little, the formula of empathy that I've
Sure, Tarun,
right?
Sure.
Okay, so designers would probably know the three parts of empathy, which is feeling, thinking, doing. What comes first? It's feeling, because it's even before we know, our brains make decisions. I think we have learned that. This happens because of our feelings. But that's the baseline on which all our decisions are made. And then comes thinking. So after the affectual response, that is understanding what the other is feeling, realizing that emotion, then thinking why that person or why am I feeling in a certain way. Now, there's an incredibly important component that gets missed in our conversation when we explain empathy, is that between thinking and doing, there is a component known as personal distress. And that's what doesn't culminate into action. And what happens, there's about 500 milliseconds, about half a second of freeze state because of personal distress. So when we see anything in our environment that happens, it takes us by shock momentarily. That's the moment if there is a mode to escape, we would escape and it would not culminate into action. All we have to do is just realize that. And if I can take an example, if you've seen the movie Mashal, where Dilip Kumar, dead of night, rainy night, is shouting frantically. Vahida Rahman, his wife, is dying and is shouting on the roads that, "Eh bhai, koi to bachao, koi to hospital le jao." And we see all lights switched off because probably people are dead asleep. A few cars pass, and we see that none of those cars stop. And when I didn't understand empathy that much, I cursed at them, said, "Oh, if I was at their places, I would have stopped." What I realize is that probably I wouldn't have stopped either. Because what happens is the speed at which we are moving, we look at a distressing stimuli that creates that escape mechanism in us. And if we are moving towards and escaping from that situation, we will invariably escape. If we are high on agreeability, then probably we will turn our car back, but then that requires even more effort. If you can understand this, then fathoming empathy becomes slightly easier, which means we have to we have to tackle personal distress. Our environment doesn't do a great job in helping us with stress and distress. So helping people manage their distress when it comes to decision making is going to be the aspect of empathy that we can learn. And then applying that formula with and design thinking is a great formula. So we don't have to rebuild a framework. We understand the formula of empathy, apply the framework of design thinking. It will help us bring about the change in mindset, going from thinking that people are selfish to thinking that people all work in collective interest. It will help us be able to take care of them in any environment that they are.
Thank you, Tarun. Beautifully explained, right? I mean, right, the entire empathy principles and the framework and the way you started, I personally liked it. That it's that the focus has to shift from where we are today to more towards community values, individual beliefs, individual values, and people, of course. Thank you, thank you. Tejani, the next question is for you. What I've done is, I've randomly picked up some of the questions that our audience has also shared, right? The ones that are relevant to the topic. So I'm picking up some of the questions from there. So how would, right? So Tejani, this one is for you. How would managers ensure that there are no falling graphs with respect to productivity while performance picks up according to new pattern of work?
Right. This is this is also very much linked to, I think, what we just heard Tarun explain, as well as taking some few key ones even from what Deepak had maintained earlier. Everything that we are talking about today is handling the workforce in a very different manner. Uh, Earlier there was a physicality which was a mainstay for us to discharge our responsibilities. So, as human resource professionals, when we looked at the human workforce, it was always something which was present over there. So, every initiative and every intervention that we actually explained or sort of put in place, they were always with the complete understanding that people were going to be around us. The sensibilities would be felt right across. The success or no success of it would also be known by reflex or by visibility, and it would tell us how good it was going to be as a measure of either efficiency or productivity or what have you. So everything that we were going to pan out for the workforce, we already had a ready-made mirror reflecting back what was going to come out as an output, and we could be very and all our systems and processes and everything else that we developed as part of the HR manuals, processes, regulations, and policies were basically hinged on this particular fulcrum. However, today there's again, and I repeat, there's a paradigm shift to that entire hypothesis, because today, unfortunately, physicality is at a discount. The very fact that we don't even get to see them, the very fact that we don't get to interact with them in flesh and blood, there is no social content available. The whole aspect of a physical workspace in itself is hung in balance, are all the new norms. And we have to therefore come to understand that there is an open space today where the mirror is no longer going to reflect exactly what's happening in the minds and in the hearts of people who are remotely distributed across probably 10,000 different places from when they are operating. And when you don't have a sociability content which is laced with the workforce, it becomes even more complex, because you have to therefore evolve new methods of touching them, which is, the touch points are now going to be very different. Like Deepak talked about, which is checking in. That checking in phenomena is what is left with us. The other part is using the digital or the e-medium in every way possible so that we can rope in the maximum number of people, into the mainstream through whatever electronic means that we have before us. So whether we want to post certain surveys, whether we want to make sure that there are certain activities which are built into our DNA of the organization today, so that it reaches out to every person remotely, working for my enterprise, it is a challenge by itself, because at the end of the day, no two human beings are alike. They are all unique propositions. And that's what makes the job of the HR professional that much more difficult. Having said that, it can't be wished away. It can't be wished away that at the end of the day, every other factor of an enterprise is not under so much of threat or challenge as is the human resource. And to be able to cull out the maximum in terms of productivity, their ability to actually maintain the work life and the mental wellness, to make sure that this disproportionate way of putting them in a situation does not make them balk, or as they as beautifully explained by Tarun, that empathy, even when I'm trying to, from an HR perspective, trying to reach out to them in a sense of empathy, it can't be wished away, it can't be written away that that person on the side, on the other side, is still in a statement of freeze, is probably still in a moment of freeze. Because this whole idea of being at home 24 by 7, 365 days, which is today fathoming to become the actual mainstay of tomorrow, may not really be the matter of choice for him. Because at the end of the day, whether my workplace was welcoming or not, I still had somewhere to go. I still looked forward to a social avenue. I still looked forward to 10 friends sitting together and going for coffee breaks. I still looked at, passing a few jokes, making a few innuendos, and then coming back to the workspace and, starting to work with vigor. However, today I can't take myself away from that one corner of my boardroom or or my bedroom, which has suddenly become my office space. So how do we address those concerns? Because unless I'm able to touch those zones, I cannot say with any amount of guarantee where the efficiencies and productivities are going. So yes, we today are we are at a very at the cusp of defining for ourselves new rules of the game. Because we, just like performance management, will have to have large number of managers checking in, feeling it, that whether the wellness part is taken care of. We make policies today so that it is not just about giving benefits to the employees, but also maintaining that whether his mental wellness is also being addressed at the same time, creating situations and creating opportunities for those people, so that even while they are performing from home, we make it easier from them, we make concessions for them, we make sure that we don't tighten the boundaries so much that even when their little child of 2 years just runs across, okay, the screen just when he's discussing, we become very tiresome about it. I mean, I'm hearing horror stories about people trying to discipline workforce working out of home who've never ever experienced such a phenomena before. What can you say to that? If you can't even be empathetic to people who are suddenly thrown into an island state, it is an island state. In my mind, what am I going through? I'm going through psychological isolation. Forgive me for using such a strong term, but it's almost like I am psychologically in a state of an island. There is an isolation. I look here, I look there, and I don't find my social component. Therefore, it is for us to reach out, to put in place systems and processes whereby not only do we become their managers, but we become their friends and their fraternity colleagues. We become their guides and mentors. I think these terms, which have been interchangeably used for so many years, today is the test of time when we actually will have to rise up and make sure that we put substance behind these norms, we put substances behind these jargons, and we effectively define ways by way of which we make these people understand that we are all in this together. The worst is over. We're going to move and wade through these muddy waters slow and steady, and we'll kill it all together. Till such time we are able to give this kind of a solace and a pat on the back and a camaraderie, and we are able to make them feel like we are on the same boat together. I don't think these concerns of progressive, productivity and efficiencies, they're going to be, they're going to fail you, because you need to exercise your empathy. You need to exercise your ability to step into his shoes in the right way, and to make sure that the moment of freeze, when it actually hits you, you don't stay frozen for too long, and you actually keep your agility alive in your mind to be able to cross that boundary when you hit it. Because that, to me, is probably going to be the biggest test of making sure that you move towards a productive zone faster than ever.
Wow, Devjani, that was fabulous. Right, I'm a fan of your the flawless
Oh,
speech
God.
setting you have. I'm so good to hear you. And I think I am personally a big fan of empathy and gratitude. That those are my personal values too. I think I'm great. I'm glad that all of us have touched upon that. And interestingly, this morning only I was reading one of the article where a report was published, and it says some really surprising fact that a lot of people, it requires 30 minutes for an individual who's just ended up a Zoom call to come back to normal, to come back to the productivity. 30 minutes. And then how they calculate the number of hours that have been lost just because of. So I think you very rightly said, that there's a different view, and it's just the era where whatever we talked about, it's time to live those values.
Yes.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Deepak. Traditionally, organizations have sharpened their focus on employee efficiencies, right? But in the post-COVID world, do you see that there will be a shift in focus from efficiency to resilience? Hello? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, Yatendra, you are audible. We can hear you.
Okay.
Are you able to hear? Are you able to hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, we are able to hear you.
I think Deepak's fallen off the audio.
Yeah, I think I can't hear Deepak. Okay. In the meanwhile,
him. The moment he joins in, we can
yeah.
have the questions sent to him. Yeah, in the meanwhile.
Right. I'll moving on to Tarun. Tarun, I understand wellness works, right? I kind of tried and studied in an hour's time what you do, and I think it's a fantastic to know about how you're shaping up, right? So I understand your wellness works, which is the organization is helping companies and employees achieve better mental health through various tools and interventions. So moving from wellness programs, traditionally we have been, aligned to organizing wellness programs in the organizations and to virtual wellness. How do you see this shift? And what advice you have for organization and individuals to adapt in the new normal?
It's a big question. Okay, so let me try to contain my answer. It's a question that I can answer for hours, right? Because it's a pet subject.
Sure.
But let me try to keep it contained. Before I give this answer, first things first. The technology that we require is already available. We are not challenged technologically. Neither are we challenged with the need. In fact, now we realize the need to apply the technology even better. So what we had 5 years back and what we have now, this immense change. For instance, say AR, VR, right? We can practically create using augmented reality and virtual reality. We can practically create any physical environment with sensors where people feel that they are in the same space as others, right? And with economies of scale, once everybody starts adopting more of it, just like desktops, laptops to phones, as more and more people adopt, it gets cheaper and cheaper and become part of our lives. That's from the technology point of view. So really, I'm not really hung up on that. The two questions that come to my mind from this question, that how do we, when we move from wellness programs to say virtual wellness, and how do we adapt in this, individuals or organizations, how we're going to adapt? Two questions that come to my mind. First, how are wellness programs designed today? And the second question is, once we move from this extremity, what is the balanced state going to look like? This is not going to stay forever, right? Let me answer these two questions and then kind of summarize, is that primarily, now there are exceptions. The first question, that is how are wellness programs designed today, is that we design basis industry best practices, which is normally the case. There are exceptions, of course. We can pick up ASSOCHAM's report that came out in 2018, and we have been running for the last 3 months. We have been running our own follow-up study on it. On the impact of corporate wellness programs in industries, we expected about 139x, 140x returns, but only about 20% companies were able to realize those benefits. When we dig deep, we realized that the reason is how we have applied them. It's primarily been adopting from best practices from different industries, within the industry, different cultural aspects, because it sounded well. And those are all good starts. That's how transformation begins, by just throwing things at problems and then seeing what's the best way of doing things. But the risk of this is that we run the risk of doing what's called as stick in the box, right? For example, the amount of resources, time and money that we have spent for physical fitness. The last time I checked, about 300 apps for wellness. There were about 85% apps focused on physical fitness. The same amount of emphasis has not gone into other facets of our life, right? It's not gone into, say, financial wellness, definitely not mental health, right? In fact, the words I like to choose for mental health, because the biggest problem that we have to solve, that is stigma, is emotional or behavioral well-being, right? To kind of make it a little bit more easy for us, because language is incredibly important. And the second question is that when we move from this extremity, what's the balanced state going to look like? And the more HR leaders and people that I talk with, I realize that irrespective of the numbers, whether it's 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, 80-20, irrespective of that, or rotational basis or fixed basis, what people have realized and what people need is a bit of autonomy to make the choice to work from anywhere, whenever they want, and to work from office whenever they want. So it's not going to be the state that we are in right now, and that will pose its different challenge. Restricting choices is also going to be incredibly important, because what we learn is when we give too many choices to people, then we are overwhelmed. Our brains are goal achievement machines. What we do is we narrow down our choices to one or two, necessarily using our availability bias, confirmation bias, and narrow down and make one simple choice. So restricted, being choice architects is going to be, we are choice architects, but now to understand what choices to provide becomes essential. If we now take these two aspects together, what we are essentially talking about is that how might we balance individual and organizational needs, these two, and then figure out how to go from universal wellness programs to a personalized wellness charter. And that transformation has begun. Now, and we chose mental wellness specifically because we realized that with this, we can understand an individual holistically. So it would give us far more data points for us to be able to charter a course, say program manage their lives, help people program manage their lives, or understand what problems they're facing and can that impact the policy of the company. So what would come back to the company in small little groups so that those policies can be changed. And all of this that I've said is from the organizational standpoint. So the advice for the organization is obviously to realize that it's going to be more of choice that they create. People have the autonomy to be able to make the choice when they want to work from where. This is what I realized. People don't want to work from home forever. People don't want to work from office forever. Essentially because two things drive people. One is change of scene. It helps our thought juices flowing. And second is privacy. We might think that we have only privacy that we keep from work and we bring it home, but we also have privacies at home. The other day I was speaking to a lad and he was saying, I'm getting married and there's just no way for me to go somewhere and think. So much happening so fast that I need some place to go and think and rationalize my thoughts on what's going to happen next. And everybody has already started with the ceremonies, which makes us think that people need that space. So switching off offices may not be the best ideas. Also, maybe not the best cost-saving mechanism. We don't know. We're figuring that out. From individuals' perspective, what I think is, and I say this with all humility at the end of that, this environment has currently brought us, a lot of pain. But as so it happens with nature, it blesses us in disguise, right? And one of the blessings in disguise that we have got from nature is a time to think. And what individuals could do now, and what probably I have done, is question, who am I? What are my priorities? What really am I gunning after, right? And then program manage their lives based on those priorities. That's second. And third, essentially the way we have worked is breakfast, work, lunch, work, home, right? What do we require to do now is intersperse our schedule with work and play throughout. So if you look at the lives of, say, Charles Darwin, or if you look at, say, life of Einstein, what did they do different? All they did was that they charted their days with everything that they love to do, including work and hobbies, right? And so, say, 2 hours of work, another hour of break, that break time essentially was also something that they did or they love to do, which took them further. And the next, again, 1 hour of work, another 1 hour of doing something else. So when you charter your life like this, string it together with all your goals, family, work, club, communities throughout the day, and not block it in terms of morning, afternoon, evening, and night, that could be a great way for individuals to manage themselves and come out much more probably solid in their views, thoughts, and how they want to move forward from this situation. So to summarize, I would say for organizations to kind of look at people that they need autonomy, to give them the choice, architect those choices, provide them, look at wellness programs to personalize them, and for individuals to first understand who they are. And one last thing, probably what individuals could do is leverage emotional wellness coaches, who we call as psychological counselors. Understand that there is a psychological counselor, there is a clinical psychologist, and there's a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is like a surgeon. A clinical psychologist is like a specialist. And a counseling psychologist is like a buddy who knows psychology, but who can still somebody you could talk to. If that information is clear to people, it becomes much more easier for people to understand from people who have a psychological context to help them gain over the dissonance and distress that comes from decision making, if this could help.
Yeah, hi Yatindra, are you able to unmute yourself? Just a second.
हमने यतेंद्र के जबान पे ताला लगा दिया.
Yatendra, you have rights.
Yeah, but he seems to be like his system has got hanged. That's what I believe. He's not able to unmute himself. Just a second. So I believe Yatindra, like if you can log off and log in again, I believe that would help you. So we'll just wait till we have Yatindra log in again. But definitely it has been an insightful session from all of you all. So we just wait for him to log in and we can begin with our conversation.
Thanks, Peter. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry about this. Okay.
It happens. It happens. Great to have you back.
Same here. All right. I'm moving back to Deepak. So Deepak, my question to you was, do you see that there will be a shifting focus from efficiency to resilience? Hello?
Yeah, I believe Deepak will have to unmute himself. He also got dropped off. Deepak, are you there?
Hey, sorry, the system keeps kicking me out for some reason.
All right, Deepak, my question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear? Can you hear me? All right. So the question was that I asked you was that, do you see that there will be a shift in focus from efficiency to resilience?
Yeah, so sure. I mean, we're obviously running out of time. So yeah, absolutely, Yatindra. I think one thing that if anything, one of the many things that we've learned during this pandemic is that really businesses can no longer just focus on efficiency like the way they have been doing, in the past, right? So they obviously have to have that focus on resilience as well going forward. And in fact, the time to start is pretty much right now. Right? So we've obviously seen that. In the past, a lot of focus has been put on efficiency in terms of operations, management, supply chain, and all the outcomes as well, right? Obviously this has given organizations considerable opportunities, but what it has really shown as well in this past few months is that it also has shown the vulnerability to such sort of disruptions as well, right? So I think. And one of the reports I was recently reading is a Gartner report where they had done a study in terms of basically the future of work trends post-COVID, and one of the trends that they were looking at, most of the organizations were looking at, is really shifting this whole designing an organization with the aspect of efficiency and moving it to designing it in terms of resilience. I think we are definitely going to see that shift. We are seeing that shift right now as well. But where I would like to leave it is like, I think we should not really focus too much on either or. We need to find that right balance and fine balance between both efficiency and resilience as well. So I'd like to leave it at that.
Thanks, Tarun. Peter, do we have some more time, 5-10 minutes, or are we on time?
Yeah, we have a couple of minutes. We can move into the Q&A session, and we'll have our participants also share their questions with us. We can have those covered too. We can have an additional 10 minutes taken over.
All right, so you'll have to, since I logged off, you'll have to share those questions once again with me, please.
Yes, I will do that.
Meanwhile, on a lighter note, Deepak, I realized Ratendra loves me. Did you realize that?
I did, Tarun.
So we will be running a poll right now. We would request all our participants to share their feedback before we move into the Q&A session.
I couldn't resist. I have a question for you. This is something that I thought, in just 5 minutes or 3 minutes, if you could just answer this. Do you believe that culture technology will be able to connect people and experience in meaningful ways? There are a lot of cultural apps, cultural organization, cultural apps have come up. Do you believe that culture technology will be able to connect people and experiences in a meaningful way?
That's for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's for you.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, there are too many of them coming up now because they've suddenly realized that, in this entire confusion around technology, where is culture going? How can technology be woven into it? The new paradigms, the new types of, new norms of working. Uh, is there a platform, therefore, to try and weave in a common thread across all of it? Now, while I personally have nothing against technology, and technology will now, going forward, will play a very essential role in multiple areas, and we in HR will obviously have to be agile enough to adapt those to make meaning wherever it's most possible. At the end of the day, I think what is very, very important, however, is still to keep the human part or the human touch, that empathy part, absolutely alive. Because if we get swept away, what is culture ultimately? Culture is nothing but a congregation or a coming together of behaviors, thinking, thoughts, and or influences all coming together. As we call, the organization is a cauldron. You get people coming from diverse backgrounds, and you throw them into a cauldron, and what emerges is a melting pot. Now, if that be so, then there is a very strong social fabric which outlines that culture building process. And I do believe that technology alone cannot become the catalyst for creating that kind of a social fabric for an organization. It still will have to be, it will still be very much have to be a catalyst from a human mind. It still will have to come from the human heart. Only thing is, we'll have to find different ways in reaching out to people, in creating that possible web through which we are able to touch maximum lives across. Only thing I feel is, technology being there today can play the role of a great enabler. So technology being an enabler can step in where required, can provide the backgrounds, can provide all the nuts and bolts for us to be able to, stitch up or actually put a machinery in place, so that through which we are able to make sure that the human emotions and the human empathies and the human wonders can actually reach across as maximum to the length and breadth of the organization. So
Well said.
culture still will have to come from us, you, me, and all across. But
Great.
technology will now become an important enabler in that entire process.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Debjani. Now there's an interesting question from one of the participants, Mr. Vinay Trivedi, and I'll pass this on to Deepak, right? And the question is that, how does social learning gets redefined? And the gentleman has asked that earlier, when he used to take a bus, he used to learn from fellow passenger, go to work, talk to people, gossip, and all that stuff, right? In the current situation, social learning has taken a decade. So how does social learning gets redefined? Deepak.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Yatindra, and I think it's something that we're still trying to obviously figure out. How this is going to happen. But I think during this pandemic as well, a lot of people. Yes, we obviously heard that obviously a lot of learning hours are being done at this point in time, but there is also a lot of people out there who, with the whole work-life balance, they are not able to do that, right? Do those learnings and or formal sort of learnings, that whether it's e-learnings or anything of that sort. So I've been having this conversation with a couple of friends of mine who've been have their hands completely full, with working and their spouses working as well, and with kids, online school, so juggling between all of that. They feel that they are missing out. They're like, everybody's talking that they've learned so much, they've done this course and that course. But I think even during this pandemic, I think we are learning in every aspect. I think the parents are learning how to actually teach their children in terms of their homeschooling and so on and so forth. And I think we're juggling through different things, so we're learning through that as well. So I mean, I think there have been learnings across as well during this pandemic. But yes, I mean, obviously it's not through some other people, like how he was mentioning. But yes, there has been certainly learnings across.
Thanks, Deepak. One last question for you, Tarun, that has come up from a gentleman named Sahil. And the question is, would you suggest any design thinking courses for beginners like me?
Design thinking itself is a course. You could, I think, any platform. You could look at Coursera or Udemy, any of those platforms, or any product management platform. IPL is from where I did my EMBA in product leadership. So you can get in touch with them and you can learn. You could reach out to probably some professors that I know, like Pawan Soni, professor. You can find him on LinkedIn. He's an awesome design thinking coach. Reach out to him, and he's awesome as a teacher. So if you reach out to him, I'm sure he would love to tutor you. So design thinking itself is a framework and tons of information available online. What you probably would need is to apply. So the best way to learn is by applying. You can't just mug up, right? So pick up a project within your company or in your life. Pick up a problem that you want to solve and apply the design thinking principle. It could be at work, could be at family, right? For instance, I'm staying with my joint family right now. I'm 40 years old. This is first time in 35 years that I've spent more than 1 month with my joint family. And that's when I realized some of the problems which was always there but never addressed. I could apply design thinking principles, actually go down to fundamentals and understand where the problems are, sit with people one-on-one and see how we can build better relationships. I would say right now it's working out fine. We're still realizing how we can get closer, so the bonding is increasing. So pick up any such problem from your life or work and apply that framework. You will learn a lot. And do it for, if you do it say once every month, for 5 days or 6 days, 1 week, you would become a design thinking champ in no time, probably in 6 months.
Thanks, Tarun.
I'd just like to add one point, if you allow me, Yatindra, and
Sure.
that's again to Sahil's question only. Picking up from what Tarun said, design thinking can be approached in two ways. One is you use it, you look at it as a fundamental course, and you look at it as something to be, gone through in a very structured manner. Or, as beautifully spoken by Tarun, just pick up any small or big project, any small thing or small problem in your life at this point of time, and start applying to it as if it was just a child play. So just like you take a box of Legos and you start dismantling Legos and putting them back together, design thinking to a large extent is something like that. And you don't really require, it's no rocket science, it's not something for which you necessarily need to undergo and put in a lot of investments, because that's also something to be kept in mind. If you just have an intuitive mind and you have an eclectic way of looking at things, you can break down problems into small pieces and look at them from two ways, that is, half glass full or half glass empty. You'll start realizing that there is always an alternate way of looking at things. And my point would be to apply that as much as you would want to go in for a structured course. Thank you.
Thank you, Debjani. Thank you, Debjani, Deepak, and Tarun. We have received so many interesting questions. I have my own set of questions too. I think eventually we'll have to request HRI to extend the time next time. And I'll park my questions for now. It was very interesting. It was so much of learning. It's a mutual learning. And I picked up some of my own learnings. Thank you so much for having us here. Over to you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yatinder, for facilitating this discussion so well. Thank you, dear panel members, Mr. Tarun, Ms. Debjani, and Mr. Deepak, for such an insightful webinar. Nice takeaways that we had, like design thinking formula along with the empathy principles by Tarun. It was really insightful. Thank you so much. We had an excellent time with all of you all out here today. It was a pleasure being with you all today. Before we conclude with our today's session, we would also want to thank all our association, that is Acacia, NASCOM COE, LinkedIn Local, and LinkedIn Ahmedabad for supporting HRAI and its event. To know more about these associations, request you to kindly visit their links provided in the chat window. Thank you once again, dear panel members and our participants, for joining us today. Do join us for our next webinar on the series Tangled to Untangled on the 10th of September 2020, a conversation with Mr. Vikas Shirodkar on Saints and Sinners, HR Redefined. See you soon. Stay safe, take care, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Sure, we may now end the webinar.
Sure. Thank you.